How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We are going to be learning today about the Franks. We have a video right here called The Franks, the Birth of Modern Europe by the channel History Mapped Out. Never came across this channel before. This was actually suggested in the comment section on one of my videos. So there was actually this one and another video suggested by the same channel, both of them by History Mapped Out. So if that was you, thanks for the suggestion. I'm going to go ahead and subscribe on this channel. Make sure you guys do that too. There's going to be a link in the description section for this original video. And as always, I've never seen this before. We're watching it together, learning together, and we're gonna check it out, see what it's all about. Hit like, hit subscribe. Check out the Patreon if you want to see me watch some British TV shows.
After the Great Migration of peoples, the map of Europe changed significantly. In Western Europe, on the lands of the Roman Empire, new states emerged, which historians called barbarian kingdoms, because power in these states was held by Germanic barbarians who had come from across the Rhine. One such tribe were the Franks, who were destined to lead the next epoch in the history of Europe.
Yeah, so I don't know much about the Franks beyond I've heard it mentioned, you know, in different movies and stuff like that. You know, you watch movies from like the castle days, you know, knights in shining armor kind of thing, and you hear mention of the Franks, right? So I looked it up a little bit before this video, and the Franks actually came from what would be modern day like Belgium area, give or take. I mean, not just that area, but of course surrounding regions, part of France, part of Germany, part of Netherlands, like just in that area, but mainly around the Belgian area. And before that, they say that they came from, I can't remember the name of it, but it's somewhere else, and it starts with a P, prior to them coming to the Belgian area. So
the name Franks comes from the Proto-Germanic fra, meaning free. From the very beginning of their existence, the Franks were powerful and numerous, as they represented an alliance of several smaller tribes. Over time, all these tribes united into two alliances: the Salian Franks, who lived along the coast, hence their name meaning maritime in Frankish, and the Ripuarian Franks, who lived along the Rhine. Their name comes from the name of the riverbank. The leader who united the two alliances was the chief of the Salian Franks, Clovis, who came from the Merovingian family. Through marriage diplomacy, he successfully united the Franks in 485 and became their king. That same year, he began a war with the Gaul-Roman kingdom of Soissons. The following year, he defeated the Gauls in a battle near their capital and captured their territories. When the Alemanni invaded Frankish territory again in 496, Clovis defeated them in the Battle of Tolbiac, and then the Franks easily subjugated half of the Alemanni lands. In 500, Clovis attacked Burgundy and won the battle at Dijon. The Franks established a protectorate over Burgundy, which remained nominally independent. But Clovis' greatest achievement was the war with the Visigoths. Using the pretext of intervening in the affairs of Burgundy, the Frankish king invaded the Visigothic kingdom in 507, won the Battle of Vouillé, and took all of southern Gaul for himself, which then constituted almost half of the Visigothic lands. Clovis expanded Frankish possessions several times over, and is considered in history the founder and first king of France. To strengthen his power, Clovis carried out administrative reforms, moved the capital to Paris, and also wrote a code of laws. But his most significant decision was the acceptance of Christianity under the Catholic Rite, in opposition to Arianism, which was then professed by the majority of Germanic tribes, and which in Rome itself was considered heresy, a distorted version of Christianity. Thus, Clovis achieved an alliance with the Church, which made it possible to consolidate power over the Franks for his dynasty. The subsequent Merovingians did not achieve the heights of Clovis. The only success of his descendants was the temporary annexation of the dependent Burgundy, but only for the Franks to soon split into 4 kingdoms.
Okay. So the Franks split into 4 kingdoms. See, it's interesting to see how things build up, because the Franks obviously turned into French, right? I mean, the Franks weren't what the French is now, but the Franks helped create what the French is now, if that makes sense. And the name French and France and stuff like that obviously comes from Frank. But here you see where it splits up into four, and you got Austrasia at the top, which I would assume eventually become, that's where you would get, I would assume, the Austria name from.
The kings of this dynasty were noted for their incompetent rule, often preferring entertainment to state affairs. It is not surprising that these rulers were dubbed by contemporaries as lazy kings. And while they sat on the throne, power in the kingdoms began to be usurped by aristocrats and administrators. The position of mayor of the palace was important for the nobility. He managed the royal palace, had access to the treasury, the guard, and all royal decrees. Thus, the mayors of the palace took over all practical power. For a long time in Austrasia, the position of mayors of the palace was held by two influential families, from the union of which Pepin of Herstal was born. In 680, he inherited the position of mayor of the palace from his father, and, through strength, intrigue, and diplomacy, managed to unite the four Frankish kingdoms. After which he focused on campaigns against the Frisians, Saxons, and Franconians, which, however, did not bring him significant success. Pepin's inheritance was received by his illegitimate son, Charles, nicknamed Martel.
And this is the guy that becomes Charlemagne, because Charlemagne means Charles the Great, right? And so I looked it up right before the video, and his dad was Pepe the Short, or Pepe the Short or something. So yeah, this is definitely him. So he comes from this area, which looks to be probably where modern day Belgium would be. I don't know for sure where that river is here, because here's the bottom of the Netherlands, is Zeeland. So then you got, this might be in the edge of France. If it's not Belgium, it's the edge of France.
Which means hammer. It took him 4 years to seize power and put the puppet king Chilperic II on the throne. However, even after this, the Franks constantly rebelled against him. In 719, Charles Martel managed to conquer Frisia, and by 730, he forcefully established a protectorate over Alemannia, Thuringia, and Bavaria. In 732, Arabs invaded Frankish territory on the Iberian Peninsula under the command of Abd al-Rahman, and, encountering little resistance, advanced to the banks of the Loire.
Is that why Spanish people sometimes can have darker skin? Is it because of the Arab influence from back in the day? Because this right here would be like where modern day Spain is.
Army numbered 30,000 soldiers, but the main advantage was the presence of heavy cavalry, which allowed them to make strong and swift strikes. Martel gathered only 20,000 soldiers, and moreover, he did not have strong cavalry. To somehow neutralize the enemy's advantage, the Franks occupied a hill near Poitiers and set up a fortified camp there. For a whole week, the Arabs unsuccessfully stormed them, and after the death of their commander, they were forced to retreat from the battlefield. Charles Martel gained fame as a victor. He, a bastard ruler who had been constantly rebelled against, now became a hero. He used his new authority to carry out reforms. Even though the Franks defeated the Arabs on foot, Martel appreciated the advantages of heavy cavalry, which easily broke through the infantry formation and almost defeated his army. Therefore, he decided to create his own cavalry. For this, he began to distribute land to his vassals in exchange for the requirement to appear for war mounted on a horse and in heavy metal armor. Thus, Charles Martel became the founder of European cavalry, which would play a dominant role on the battlefield for almost 1,000 years.
So basically, he invented the knights, because that's what a knight is, right? Kind of. I mean, you need metal armor, you're riding around on a horse, you got a sword. Huh. Very cool.
Equally important was the emergence of a new aristocratic family among the Franks, named after its founder, Charles, the Carolingians. From Charles Martel, the position of mayor of the palace was inherited by his son Pepin, nicknamed Short for his short stature. However, this position did not suit him, and Pepin wanted the crown. And he found an opportunity to get it. In 751, the Pope, in exchange for military assistance, crowned Pepin the Short. The last king of the Franks from the Merovingian dynasty, Childeric III, was forcibly tonsured into a monk. In gratitude, Pepin began a war with the Lombards, who interfered with the rule of the Pope in Italy. In 755, he crossed the Alps and captured the Lombard capital. The next year, the Lombards besieged Rome. Pepin the Short invaded Italy again, where he defeated the Lombards under the walls of Rome, and then handed over a number of lands to the Pope, called the Papal States. This will go down in history as the donation of Pepin. Pepin the Short continued to try to expand his lands. In 759, he captured Narbonne, and the next year he had to suppress the uprising of the Aquitaine people. Aquitaine was long reluctant to submit to the new dynasty. As soon as Pepin left it for the winter, the Aquitaines rebelled again, and he had to come here with an army the following spring. Pepin spent the last 8 years of his reign that way, and he died during another campaign against the rebellious Aquitaine. His eldest son, Charlemagne, successfully completed the campaign against Aquitaine, mainly because he enlisted the support of part of the rebellious nobility, whom he promised land and wealth. At the same time, he finally annexed Gascony to the royal domains. Initially, Charles had to share the throne with his younger brother, who, however, died after 3 years of joint rule. Then the new king, having the strongest army in Western Europe, began what he had long dreamed of: conquest. Father of Charles.
I mean, that's all you did back then as a king. You just took somebody else's land or you defended your own land. That's pretty much it. I mean, in between that time, you drink wine and you get, rotten fruit thrown at you by the peasants. And that's your life.
Managed to arrange a marriage for his son with the daughter of the Lombard king. But in 771, Charlemagne broke off the marriage and sent the princess back to Italy. Angry Desiderius declared war on the Pope, an ally of the Franks, and the Pope in response called on Charlemagne for help. In the autumn of 773, Charlemagne gathered his army near the Alps. The Lombards also brought their troops there. Then, on Charlemagne's orders, part of the Frankish army bypassed the enemy through little-known mountain paths and began to encircle them. In panic, the Lombard army dispersed, and Desiderius himself was forced to hide in Pavia, which the Franks soon besieged. In the spring of 774, leaving part of his troops for the siege, Charlemagne himself headed east, where the Second Lombard army was gathering. The unexpected approach of the Franks to Verona forced the Lombards to surrender without a fight. After that, Charlemagne went to Rome, made an agreement with the Pope, and returned to Pavia, whose residents, tired of hunger, soon handed over their king to the Franks. Desiderius was forcibly tonsured as a monk and taken north, and Charlemagne took the title of King of the Franks and Lombards and installed his son Pepin to rule Italy.
Nice. So he's a double king at this point.
While Charlemagne was fighting in the south, the Saxons invaded Austrasia and looted it. In response the next year, Charlemagne invaded Saxony and marched, burning Saxon towns. But before he could return home, the Lombards rebelled against him, and he had to return to Italy again. Charlemagne quickly crushed the rebellion and returned to conquering the Saxons. In 777, the Saxons agreed to peace at Paderborn and recognized Frankish rule. After subduing the north, Charlemagne turned his attention to the lands that the Franks had long dreamed of, the lands of the Visigoths, where the
Geez, so the Franks, they had like half of Europe at this point, it seems like, for sure.
Arabs ruled at the time. In 778, he crossed the Pyrenees and laid siege to Zaragoza. The siege was difficult, and when Charlemagne learned that an Arab army was gathering near Barcelona to relieve Zaragoza, he hurried home. The retreat was covered by the Nantes Margrave Roland. He and his squad fell into an ambush in Roncesvalles Pass, organized by the Basques in revenge for the Frankish burning of their cities. Roland became a symbol of knightly bravery and a hero of medieval literature. The Song of Roland became popular, transforming him into the king's nephew and a knight who heroically died in battle with the Arabs. The failed campaign against the Arabs was evaluated by one of the Saxon leaders, Widukind, who was then hiding in Denmark. In 779, he returned home for the first time and raised a rebellion. Charlemagne invaded Saxony and suppressed this rebellion, reaching the Elbe with his army. This time, he not only defeated the rebel Saxons, but also forcibly baptized them, built churches and forts. The most stubborn Saxons were forcibly resettled in Aquitaine. Widukind, however, did not give up and spent 2 years preparing for a new rebellion. This time, he conspired not only with the Saxons, but also incited the Frisians and Lusatian Slavs to rebel. Moreover, he received help from the Duke of Bavaria, who had long dreamed of getting rid of Frankish suzerainty. In 782, Widukind returned home again, and the Saxon uprising flared up with renewed vigor. The rebellious Saxons destroyed the built forts, burned churches, executed priests, and mass refused baptism. They also managed to lure the Frankish troops, sent to suppress the rebellion, into an ambush and defeated them in the Battle of Suntel Mountain. Angry Charlemagne gathered troops in Verdun and brought there 4,500 Saxon hostages. He ordered them all to be executed. This event will go down in history as the Massacre of Verdun. After that, Charlemagne marched with his army through the lands of the Saxons. He barely avoided defeat in the battle near Thietmeli, but defeated Widukind in the battle on the Haas River. However, he still couldn't either defeat the rebellious army or capture their leader. So Charlemagne founded the city of Frankfurt, where he settled for the next 3 years. From there, he constantly raided the Saxons.
So Charlemagne's the one that founded the city of Frankfurt, which is now in modern day Germany. I believe it's Germany. You know, and that's another thing I was looking up before this was like with Charlemagne, because he didn't speak French. Like, he wasn't a French speaker. He wasn't French. There was no French at that time. I mean, there might have been French language, but there wasn't French people. The Franks is, and whatever, and helped influence what turned into the French people. He spoke, I believe what the internet was saying when I was looking up was like a High German, more than likely, or something similar to a High German.
Burning their towns. In addition, he expelled 7,000 inhabitants from Saxony. In 785, Widukind, not wishing to continue the bloody war, reconciled with Charlemagne and even accepted Christianity, after which he disappeared from the pages of history. According to one legend, Widukind killed Charlemagne, never forgiving him for the successful rebellion. According to another legend, Charlemagne made him the Duke of Saxony, from whom the dynasty of the future Ottonians descended. Charlemagne also did not forget the betrayal of Tassilo III. He also remembered that in his war against the Lombards, the
So, hold on. Who disappeared? The Vivard, whatever the guy's name was?
of history. According to continue the bloody war, reconciled with Charlemagne, and even accepted Christianity, after which he disappeared from the pages of history. According to one legend, Widukind killed Charlemagne.
So they're saying Vivident, or whatever his name is the one that disappeared, but according to one legend, he's the one that killed Charlemagne. So did Charlemagne disappear at this point too? I thought it was the other guy that disappeared. So why is the rumors that he killed Charlemagne? Or is Charlemagne the one that disappeared? I'm confused here. I mean, we're going to continue watching. Maybe it'll sort it out, but...
Never forgiving him for the successful rebellion. According to another legend, Charlemagne made him the Duke of Saxony, from whom the dynasty of the future Ottonians descended. Charlemagne also did not forget the betrayal of Tassilo III. He also remembered that in his war against the Lombards, the Bavarians supported the latter. Moreover, scouts brought news that Tassilo III conspired for a joint attack on the Franks with the Avars. In 788 AD, Charlemagne concentrated 3 armies on the border with Bavaria.
So then the dude couldn't have killed Charlemagne because the guy's going on and doing more stuff. So I don't know what that part was about. If somebody could sort that out for me, that would be great.
The northern one was under the command of Count Gerald of Franconia. The southern one was led by his son Pepin, and the western one was led by himself. All 3 armies began to advance simultaneously, and the Bavarians couldn't even decide whom to march against. Tassilo III capitulated without a fight and went into monasticism, and Gerald became the new Duke of Bavaria, now Bavarian. While the Franks were conquering Bavaria, the Avars invaded Italy. After plundering the Friuli region, they returned to the Danube. This became the reason for declaring war. Charlemagne invaded the Avar Khaganate, but barely avoided defeat himself and was forced to return home. In 791 AD, the Franks, led by Gerald of Bavaria and Eric of Friuli, made a new, already successful campaign. They captured most of the Avar fortresses and forced the Avars to retreat beyond the Danube. In 796, with the help of the uprising of the Slavic Horatan people against the Avars, Gerald and Eric managed to capture the Avar ruler. In 799 AD, the Franks made another campaign, in which both commanders, Eric of Friuli and Gerald of Bavaria, died. Then Prince Pepin, who took command of the Franks, ordered all Avars to be slaughtered, thus exterminating their entire nation. During the war with the Avars, Charlemagne refused to lead the armies, preferring life in the capital and political reforms. Despite this, in 792 AD, he had to suppress a rebellion led by his illegitimate son Pepin the Hunchback. In 793 AD,
So he has 2 sons named Pepin. One of them's an illegitimate son named Pepin the Hunchback, who leads a rebellion against him that he has to go and take care of. This is like a comedy show.
By his illegitimate son Pepin the Hunchback. In 793 AD, Saxony rebelled against him again, and he had to march there once more. After this, the Saxons rebelled 3 more times, but these rebellions were suppressed by Charlemagne's dukes. In 799 AD, the Franks subdued Brittany. In 801 AD, Charlemagne's son, Prince Louis, who ruled Aquitaine, invaded through the Pyrenees, captured Barcelona, and then subjugated the Basques. However, Charlemagne's main achievement during these years was obtaining a new title. He used as a pretext the fact that in Byzantium in 797, Empress Irene came to power. According to the Franks, a woman cannot be emperor. This is how Charlemagne decided to become the new emperor. The Pope, who was expelled by the Romans in 799 AD, supported Charlemagne in exchange for him returning Rome under the power of Pope. Thus, in 800 AD, on Christmas Day, the 25th of December, Charlemagne the Great was crowned Emperor of Rome.
And I've seen that in the comments too. Nobody's ever called him Charlemagne the Great because Charlemagne literally translates to Charles the Great. So when you're saying Charlemagne the Great, you're saying Charles the Great, which is quite redundant.
5th of December, Charlemagne the Great was crowned Emperor of Rome, and the Frankish kingdom became an empire. Tragic for Charlemagne was the year 810, when an epidemic took the lives of his 2 eldest sons.
It was COVID.
Therefore, all his lands were inherited by his 3rd son, Louis, who became the new emperor upon his father's death in 814 AD. His first decision was to expel almost all the courtly women, including his sisters, to the monastery, for which he was called the Pious. However, Louis the Pious' entire reign was marked by rebellions. In 817 AD, his nephew Bernard of Italy rebelled against him. He agreed to negotiations with the emperor, but he was captured and blinded, which led to his death. The next year, Brittany rebelled against Louis, but the rebellion was brutally suppressed. In 822 AD, the Bretons rebelled again and lasted in war for 3 years. In 830 AD, they rebelled once more, and this time won practical independence, which, however, the Franks recognized only 20 years later. In 830 AD, Louis faced a rebellion from his own children. They captured their father and forced him to renounce power. But a year later, they started a war among themselves and released their father, returning him to the throne so that he could decide their fate.
What?
In 837 AD, Aquitaine rebelled against Louis, led by his own grandson, who proclaimed himself King of Aquitaine. Louis was unable to suppress the Aquitaine rebellion. Upon the death of Louis the Pious in 840 AD, his sons again started a war for their father's inheritance. None of them had enough strength for a decisive battle and victory. Therefore, in 843 AD, the brothers signed the Treaty of Verdun, under which they divided the Frankish Empire among themselves.
Okay. So then so they divided it up. Okay, cool. That makes sense. It's huge, right? Whatever. But then you got, so the West Frankish Kingdom, I would believe, that's probably the one that went on to become called with the name France then. Right? So then is the modern day Germany East Frankish Kingdom? And that's interesting how things change.
Thus, the empire ceased to exist. Although Lothair continued to call himself emperor, it was only a formal title. The Carolingians continued to fight among themselves, and their possessions became prototypes of European states. Lothair's lands became Italy in the future. Louis's lands, Germany.
Okay, so because they kept shrinking and kept shrinking, and because things change, so he lost a lot of land in the top, blah blah blah, got shrunk down to Italy. Same with Germany, they lost a lot of land in the bottom, because some of this is going to be modern day Austria and etc., right? So, and then same over here with France.
Charles' lands formed France, and the strip of land in the middle, later called Lotharingia, became the subject of disputes and wars until the 20th century.
Yeah, it did. And if you want to check out the 80 Years' War between Spain and the Netherlands, I did a reaction to that too. So search that up on the channel. You guys have a super fun, awesome day. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care, bye.